There's plenty of bad news if you want to watch it. There's a lot of things that cause you to be depressed. Question is, where do you find your joy? What do you look at, listen to, associate with that will build you up instead of tearing you down? Hi, this is Barry Phillips. This is 10-minute tour. Listen to me. This is Foundations for Life.
Barry, if you're looking at yourself in the monitor, it's 10-minute Torah. If you're looking at the two of us, it's Foundations for Life.
Gotcha.
I know the feeling. You've got a lot of different programs you do. I'm up to about 5 different teachings I do a week. It's like, okay, which shirt did I wear last week?
Yeah. So Mike Clayton, my esteemed co-host, where is your joy? What do you look for to put a smile on your face?
I just threw it out the window. Just decided to forget it. Very, we've been discussing this a little bit on the phone the last few days, and there's this thing of joy. It's kind of like mixed emotions. There is a joy that is there because as long as I just did a shameless plug. I just did a teaching. That'll be released in a couple days on my website on this. I went to Matthew chapter 24. Anyone that can read Matthew chapter 24 and be joyful about that chapter is a sicko. Okay. When you read of wars and rumors of wars, of famines, of earthquakes, and all the things, if you can take joy in that, then I would say that you have no heart. You have no compassion. But at the same time, the end result is the kingdom being established. The end result is, as we were praying before the program, is righteous rule.
Yes.
The end result is the words of Isaiah, the Torah going forth from Jerusalem, the word from Mount Zion, the billions of dollars of weapons that were given to the Taliban and all of those others over there, for them to be beaten into plowshares, for the lion to lay down with the lamb. That's the joy. That's the joy that is set before Yeshua. It's instead of Yeshua in Hebrews, for the joy set before him, he endured the execution stake. What is that joy that was set before him? It is us. But I guarantee you there was not a moment during the execution of Messiah that he was joyful. But it was the joy that was set before him. And so the joy that is set before us is him.
I'm reminded of a scene that took place in the life of David, King David. I remember preaching on this when I was an evangelist back in the 80s. Well, that's a long time ago. In 2 Samuel 30, the Amalekites have come in and they have burned with fire the city of Ziklag, which is where David and his men had been based out of doing their raids. That good thing going. David had a city. He had a group of loyal followers and capable warriors with him. They had their wives, their children, their families were with them. They could go out and raid during the day and come home and eat supper and lay in their own bed that night.
It was a strange thought for us,
So things were good. The problem for me, as I see this, is that David was settling for less than the kingdom.
Mm-hmm.
He'd been anointed king, not of Ziklag, but of Israel.
Yeah.
So the city's burned with fire. The families are all taken captive. And they come home and they find everything's destroyed and their families are gone. And it says that these grown men who are battle hardened and blood-stained are sitting on the ground crying until they have no more power to cry. That's a lot of crying. Two things what happened then. Number one, it says in verse 6 that David was greatly distressed because they were talking about stoning him. And I was wondering this morning as I was reading through this again, why would they want to stone David? Unless, according to what we've just been studying in the Torah portions recently, they perceived that all this bad had happened because there was sin in David's life, and therefore they must stone him to get the favor of the father back.
So wrong perception of events.
Yeah.
Okay.
But then it says that David called for the ephod, and he strengthened himself in Elohim. There's a time and a point where, yes, the news is bad. There's plenty of it. I was reading some news stories about Louisiana today and the devastation there and in Mississippi. People driving down a road in Mississippi and they can't see a hole that is developed in the highway and cars going in and people are dying. A man gets carried off by an alligator in Louisiana, because it's floating out there in the flood waters. It's just sad, sad news everywhere down there. You got the whole Afghan debacle. Everything is bad. There's a point in time where you have to seize yourself and say, I need some joy. If I allow the world's events to control me and shape my focus and my mindset, then I'm going to be defeated like they are. You have to have a source, a consistent source that you know I can turn to this, or I can start thinking in this direction, and I will find joy in that process. It's not as easy as just quoting a favorite verse. Some people will go to Nehemiah chapter 8 and verse 9. Do not be sad, for the joy of Yahweh is your strength.
Mm-hmm.
Well, quote it, but if it takes more than quoting that verse to put joy in your heart.
Barry, I post a lot of my thought for the day things on Facebook. There's numerous reasons I do that.
Yeah.
Number one is just to encourage people, because it's normally something that's challenging, encouraging, motivational. But there is a point of frustration with me in posting things like that because I get religious cliches. This is a day in which religious cliches will not get you through it.
Amen.
It's like, the bumper sticker that says Jesus is the answer. Well, it depends on the question. If the question is, what are we having for dinner? Religious cliches are not going to be our answer. And I agree with you that we need to have an inner joy that is driving us. That it's like a POW. Is when I was teaching preparedness, I did some study on POWs, and the POWs that got through it and were released on the other side. The reason they got through it is because they were asked, what got you through this? And they said the hope of home. The hope of being out of here, the hope of being home. And so today, the whole aspect of the kingdom. I mean, I've taught about the kingdom a little bit through the years. I think on like everything that I do, it's not just something I teach on, though. It's something that's inside of me that's driving me. That this hope of the kingdom. When I sit, you want to know what brings me joy? When I sit down and turn off everything and just think about what that day is going to bring. When I think about the day that once again I get to breathe the air of Israel, when as the psalm says, one of the psalms says, I love your dust, oh Yerushalayim, I love your dust. I mean, to the day that I get to walk into Moshe Kempinski's shop again and feel the dust that some of that's been there for 2,000 years, I think. I mean, that's what brings me joy. Thinking about my children, my grandchildren being raised with the Torah, with the Messiah teaching the Torah. Those are the things that bring me joy. That's kind of it.
Mm.
But let me finish. Let me just go on. I'll let you kind of think through that one. But here's a verse that has stuck out to me for many years, Barry. And this is where I'm at. Okay. I mean, I got that joy of what's good, but here's where I am at today. It's summed up in Ecclesiastes chapter 1, verse 18. And I'm going to change it just a little bit to make it more of the Hebrew words meaning than the English that is written. For in much wisdom is much frustration. And the more knowledge, the more grief and pain. If you are walking today in wisdom, you're going to be frustrated. You're going to be frustrated with the things that are going on around. If you're really knowledgeable about what's going on, it's going to cause grief. It's going to cause pain. But in the midst of that, you know what I sit and talk to Kathy once in a while about this. I cannot imagine, Barry, being in this day and not knowing the Elohim of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob and the promises that were made to them. I can't imagine not being able to know that he is there. And it's not just a religious cliche of, well, God's in control. I mean, that one to me, I want to, there's a word spoken over in Revelation chapter 3 that's a word I would use. But these little cliches, I am not, I know that he's in control. But I don't see him sitting, though that verse that you quoted many times, he who sits in the heavens laughs, he's not laughing in joy. I think there's a grieving from the heavens. And if those of us that are in tune with what is happening in the heavenly realm, I think there's going to be some grief. But there's also going to be that joy that is still set before him, which is us. And the joy that's still set before us is him. I'll get off my soapbox for a moment.
There is a verse here. Yeah, in Revelation chapter number 11, it says that the reign of this world has become the reign of our master and of his Messiah, and he shall reign forever and ever. Mm-hmm. And at that announcement, the 24 elders are falling on their faces and worshiping Elohim. And it includes the idea that the nations were enraged and your wrath is come. The understanding is that in judgment brings the kingdom.
Yeah.
Mike, when I was reading some news headlines this morning, and I saw a story about how that a certain group of politicians were making demands. I love how that they just throw out, we demand. Mm-hmm. So, I demand that the world hand over its wealth to me. Well, what good is that? Who am I, and what credibility do I have to make such a demand?
I'll just take the cost of one of the Humvees that they left behind.
Yeah. So this group of politicians is making demands about the current choice for the head of the Federal Reserve. And they're wanting a Federal Reserve chairman that is more climate change oriented. I'm thinking, what does the two have to do with any? I mean, this is crazy, Mike. When you look at the foolishness, the absurdity
Mhm.
that goes for that it is the foundation of government. And you and I look at things that are proposed and voted on, and we're yelling at the TV screen or at the radio and saying, "This is nuts. We can't afford it. It doesn't work. It's not legit. This is obviously a scam, etc." In the kingdom, when Yeshua reigns, it will be a reign based on truth.
Mm-hmm.
Let's flip the coin over. Can we handle the truth?
No, you can't flip the coin anymore because that would be against climate change, Barry. So you're gonna have to flip your ATM. No, you can't use an ATM card because that gets you cash. So it's gonna have to be your debit card. So the other side of the debit card.
Let's look at the other side of the equation.
Sorry, just trying to add a little joy. Just
we had to be prepared to live in truth. But truth, Yeshua said, knowing the truth, and the truth will set you free. There's joy in freedom. There's joy in liberty. The sadness and the oppression comes because we feel like that our liberties and joys are being imposed upon. Joy cannot be based on circumstance.
Right.
Joy is not happiness. The two are not equal. Happiness is...
You could camp there a while, Barry, with what you just said. Joy is not equated to happiness. Joy is something that is from inside.
Happiness is external.
Happiness is from outside. Yeah.
So happiness is based on circumstances, good emotions, good feelings. Joy is a spirit. It is one of the fruits of the Spirit. It is spiritually derived. Your joy does not depend upon circumstance. It depends upon the inner state of your being and your awareness of things in the Spirit. If I look around, I got plenty to be depressed, concerned, and overwhelmed by. But joy is in my relationship with Yah. Those who come through the current circumstances and those that are yet to come, that we will look back at this point and say, I'd rather be there than where I am now. Those who get through all of that are those that maintain a righteous attitude in their walk with Yah. The plot of the powers of darkness is to so overwhelm the people of Elohim that they become despondent, depressed, and filled with fear. Those who maintain a healthy walk with the Father through Yeshua are going to have an answer to those things. It doesn't mean that we're not going to have to endure, maybe even suffer, maybe even give our lives. But we can do so with joy. I don't think that when Rav Shaul, the Apostle Paul, was about to be executed, that he was depressed. He'd already come to the conclusion that when he, in his last writings to Timothy, I finished my course, I have fought the good fight, I finished the course, and I have kept my faith. Mm-hmm. Now there's laid up for me a crown of righteousness. And I think that he understood. He'd already written to another congregation, I want to go, but it's better for you that I stay. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to choose to stay. He'd already come to the place that he was ready to go. So he'd extended his stay already. So even though he was about to be executed and beheaded, I think he had an attitude of expectancy. I'm about to be released from this body that's been beaten and shipwrecked and nearly drowned and have starved and oppressed. I'm finally get rid of this thorn in my flesh. I'm going to be free, and I'm about to see my Messiah face to face.
Yeah, I don't think he had this giddy look on his face, and he was kind of skipping, little skipping rope thing when he went up there. But the joy that was prevalent, it's like when Ananias and Sapphira are in the prison. There was a joy that they had that brought forth hymns from them, blessings coming forth that changed people around them. So we're not talking about some giddy thing. It's something that's inside. Yeah.
Ananias and Sapphira were in
Oh, I'm sorry. Paul and Silas. My brain was going in too many different directions there. Paul and Silas, yeah, Ananias and Sapphira. No, they didn't have any joy. You could edit that part out, Barry, but you won't.
No. I got to keep that. That's a classic.
Oh yeah, that's like Balaam and Balak. I keep mixing them up, but I always get the donkey right. So I did that, folks, just to let you know that was done on purpose. That was not a blooper, but I just wanted to see if Barry Phillips was listening.
Oh yeah, I was
listening. All right. Okay, let me go to another verse here.
Yeah, you might want to change the subject.
Yeah, I know. Something that I teach on, again, I teach on a lot. Psalm 126, when Yah restored Zion's fortunes, we thought we were dreaming. Our mouths were filled with laughter and our tongues shouted with joy. That's a great verse, except for the ending of the end of the psalm is this: those who sow in tears will reap with cries of joy. He who goes out weeping as he carries his sack of seed will come home with cries of joy as he carries his sheaves of grain. Those that weep over the day will see the joy in the end. Are we willing to seek delayed joy through the tears of our day?
Good question.
I mean, he does not expect us, Barry. I don't believe that he expects us to be something that we're not capable, to just turn off. I hear people that, well, I don't watch the news anymore. Really? People know what's going on. When you say you don't watch the news, that means you don't watch between 6:30 and 7 on 3 different channels. That's what that normally means. Okay. But we all, I think, keep up with the news. This is a day that there are sorrowful things that are happening. Go back to another verse in Psalm 56, verse is 9 or 8, depending on the translations. You have kept count of my wanderings. Store my tears in your water skin. Aren't they already recorded in your book? He's recorded our tears. There's not a tear that we've shed in our day, but that tear is not, that tear is, I don't know what I'm trying to describe here. There's a weeping over the situation of the day, and there's a weeping over we're not there yet. It talks about the wanderings. Okay, you've kept count of my wanderings. What were you weeping over? Were you weeping over the situation that you were in the midst of the wandering, or weeping over the fact that you're not there yet? It's like taking a ride with your grandkids. Are we there yet? They start crying. Yeah, they start crying. They start complaining. Why? It's not because they're not comfortable. I mean, the air conditioning's on. You gave them all the gummy bears, and and the snacks, and they got everything they could need back there. They got some coloring books, DVD player, iPod, everything. I mean, they got everything they need, but they're complaining over, we're not there yet. We want to be there. Is that what our tears are, our grief, our yearning, our frustration, all of those things that we're feeling today? It's about, we're not there yet.
Yeah, I guess we have this idea, Mike, in our minds. Well, when Yeshua comes, it'll all be fixed and we'll all be okay and it'll all be glorious and wonderful then. That expectation, though, needs to have an effect on us now. We can't, it's not just a pie in the sky mentality pertaining to the kingdom.
Mm-hmm.
The kingdom needs to be inside of us. Righteousness, joy, and shalom in the Ruach HaKodesh is the kingdom. I know in whom I believed, as Job said.
Yeah.
I know in whom I believed. And he said, though the skin worms devour his flesh, yet in my flesh I shall see my Redeemer. There is that hope then. So I have a righteous relationship. I have a sense that he is my completeness. I trust him for that. Whatever I lack, he has always proven himself faithful to make up what I lack, to be my whole, my completeness, my relational whole, my spiritual whole, if you will. WHOLE. My joy. My joy, my grandkids come over and we get to playing and laughing and having a good time. You and I are, we can get out on the golf course, and when we do, it can be a little bit serious, but eventually we're laughing and yucking it up about something other. And it's fun. There are those moments that you're in good company, you're surrounded by encouraging circumstances. That sense of well-being comes over you. That in itself is joyful, but it's not the source of your joy. My joy has to be in the knowledge that my Yah reigns.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned the verse a while ago, or the phrase a while ago, he's got it all in control. Yeah, nothing that is formulated in this present world is going to overthrow my king. Nothing. And though evil seems to prevail for a season, there is a time of the outpouring of Yah, and he knows how to keep those that are his, just as he did Noah and his family.
Yeah.
If I will prepare my heart, I'm sure that in Noah's day inside the ark, smelling animal dung and being in close quarters and darkness and seasick and all of that kind of stuff, that was a miserable ride. I don't think that they were inside having popcorn and watching movies.
Oh, I think it probably took him, I mean, I don't know how long it took him just to get over the cries of the people that he heard after the door was closed.
The grief of that.
Oh,
but
yeah.
You know what? When he got off of that ark and his feet were back on dry ground, and he realized that the world had been destroyed, and there he stood alive. All because Yah favored him. First thing he did, Mike, was offer offerings of thanksgiving.
Yeah.
If you want joy, start off by praising him and for who he is, and then thanking him for what he does. Yeah. Not just what he's done. I'm thankful for this, and I'm thankful you gave me that, etc. I'm thankful for what you've done, but I'm thankful for what you're doing, and I am thankful for what you're going to do. The old timers adage of, if once you get finished magnifying and exalting him, your problems seem about that big now.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that.
So let Yah's strength, his consistency, his faithfulness, the excellence of his plan from before the beginning of time, the realization that he's got this, I trust him for this. My hope is in him, not in the solutions of mankind, especially the mankind that we're following after right now. Well, I won't even go down that trail. It's discouraging,
There's
but
joy down that trail.
there's joy in him.
Mm-hmm.
There's also joy, Mike, in right relationship with one another. Never discount the body of Messiah and the ability that we have to encourage and edify one another that can produce some joy in our heart.
So true. I want to go back quickly before we end. I want to go back to something you quoted of Job. I know in whom I have believed. There's a verse that finds joy, but if you miss that verse, there's one word that if you miss it, let me just give it to you like this: knowing in what you have believed will not bring joy. Knowing in whom you have believed will.
Okay. Yeah.
There's
Agreed.
a lot of people that know what they believe and are grumps. When you know in whom you believe, things change.
Yes. Very well said. And what a great way to end. Folks, look up. Have hope. Everybody knows what everybody's going through. Everybody understands your discouraging dilemmas. We're in this boat together.
Mm-hmm.
But joy, if we can get through this and put joy in our heart and rejoicing in our demeanor and our expression, those that are in darkness will see the light that we carry, the brightness of our shining, according to Isaiah 60. And they will come and ask us to share that joy, that light with them. That's what needs to be happening. You and I, we all need to be different. And we can do that. Mike, thank you for encouraging, for being a source of laughter today. Let's all pray for Ananias and Sapphira in prison if they get out.
Yeah, well.
And we'll see y'all again next week. And shalom.
All right.